Welcome to In the Eye of the Storm, what we've seen and what's to come in the STEM Ed category. I'm Antonio Ramirez, Senior Category Manager for STEM Ed and Labs at the LUPC.
And I'm Danielle Sweeney, the Category Manager for STEM Ed at SUPC.
Market trends. New laboratories being built in the sector. It's really difficult to come up with general trends in the higher education sector, thanks to the sheer number and diversity of our institutions across the country. While some universities are avoiding capital projects and large STEM Ed investments altogether, others are building entire campuses across the land. For example, UCL is currently in the middle of a huge expansion in East London, the biggest in its history. UCL East will host 8 faculties for 4,000 students and 260 academic staff at the Stratford Olympic site. New labs on this campus include the Advanced Propulsion Lab, dedicated to the decarbonisation and the future of transport, the Global Business School for Health, which will prepare students to meet challenges for the world's future healthcare system, and the Experiential Learning and Research Hub, which supports manufacturing and design, and I'm told will include a microbrewery lab for purely educational purposes. In addition, the University of Bedfordshire recently completed their new STEM Ed building in Luton, a £40 million 4-floor facility exclusively for STEM Ed subjects. Also, the University of East London recently built a £2.5 million new high-tech bioscience lab at their Stratford campus, increasing teaching space by over 150% and creating more space for collaborative work. Rebuilding and reusing, how we can extend the life of laboratory assets. So at the other end of the budget scale, some institutions are looking to save money and are finding creative ways to prolong the life of their assets, a great approach which we in procurement will always value. We're also pleased to see that our lovely suppliers have recognized this need and are offering services that will help our bottom line and ensure that sustainability continues to be at the heart of what we do. Some suppliers run schemes where they recondition returned equipment for onward sale to less demanding environments, yet still remain health and safety and waste compliant. As companies and nations work to reduce their environmental footprint, repurposing is on the rise. For repurposing to be successful, building trust with the supplier is critical, because this will help identify models that can offer component parts that can be replaced to extend the asset life, as opposed to buying new every single time. Over to you, Danny.
Okay, so my one is about glove pricing. Now, this will continue to rise into 2022 due to the pandemic and the draw on supply. We are working with suppliers on the frameworks to manage this as best we can. It is a moving feast. It basically is everyone around the world all wants the same gloves from 5 manufacturers. We're working with the framework suppliers to ensure that that increase isn't extraordinary given the current situation, and as soon as it starts to drop, we'll be moving those prices back into the framework price range. The greater availability for plastic recycling schemes, this isn't for items classed as hazardous waste. What we have noticed in recent contract reviews on the ERLA framework for the chemicals and consumables is that there's a lot more initiatives going forward for recycling lab single-use plastics. Now, labs themselves are a big user of single-use plastics. They can't be used quite often because they are classed as hazardous material. There are several initiatives going forward. A glove supplier is looking at how to recycle gloves. We've got tip racks that are being manufactured from recycled tip racks. And they're also recycling their plastic waste to be repurposed, be it recycling bins, playgrounds, guttering in some instances. There's a lot more initiatives going forward, and we are working with the ERLA frameworks predominantly to see what new initiatives we can work with and get institutions on board. As and when we have more details, we'll be able to share them. But at the moment, it's early stages, and we're looking at what we can do to improve the framework going forward.
category insights, current sector laboratory equipment needs. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the life sciences equipment framework that I manage. We're currently in the middle of this framework, which started in July 2019, and our intention was to offer a wide range of biotech and life science equipment under one roof. This equipment is delicate and can be very expensive and represent a significant investment for our members. Often, a flurry of inquiries won't materialize into a sale until many months down the line, which makes it challenging to understand actual demand patterns. Year one of this framework saw only £150,000 spent from just a handful of institutions. It wasn't until March 2020 that we started seeing a sharp increase in the number of inquiries from all types of organizations. And it is only now, more than a year into the pandemic, that we can say we've seen a significant ramp up. Year two is seeing more than a 10-fold increase in spend, with a total figure of almost £1.8 million on the framework so far, from around 14 institutions. And we do expect this to increase. Products that I keep getting asked about include cell preparation systems, tangential flow filtration systems, flow cytometers, various cell manipulation products, and lots of bioreactors. In terms of the general lab equipment framework that we all know and love, this one's been in place since June 2016, and we've seen a total spend of just over £62 million across the 7 lots, with annual spend consistently hovering around the £50 million per year mark. Over 250 institutions nationwide have used this framework. 5 more lots will be added to the next iteration of this framework, so we expect these figures to increase in the coming years. More on this later. Danny?
Okay. Brexit, the rules of origin tariff. Now we've noticed predominantly in the ERLA framework, chemicals and consumables again, that some of the suppliers have been passing down this rules of origin tariff. This is a tariff where if a product can't be certified that it's at least 80% manufactured within the EU, they will get charged this. It's an additional 1.5%. Some manufacturers have been able to certify some products, so they haven't had that tariff imposed. Others have such a vast range of products, they just do not have the manpower to go through each individual one. So as a blanket, they've imposed it across all products. We're working with at least 2 of the larger suppliers on the ERLA framework to try and iron this out. And as and when products get the certification, that charge comes off effectively. As it stands, there are a handful of suppliers that are affected, but an awful lot of them, and on antibodies, a lot of them have said it's not an issue because the majority of those come through the US or China. We are monitoring it and we'll be having updates as and when things change. But currently, I think the key one that we're aware of is Corning, who have put it across all products. It's an additional 1.5%. This is in addition to any price increases, which handy leads on to my next item, which is price increases predominantly around CPI. So CPI, when we awarded the chemicals and consumables framework, CPI was around the 1.1, 1.2% mark. Since the price review period in November to December, January last year, this year, it dropped to 0.7%. Given that we're in the middle of Brexit and COVID, suppliers on the framework raised concerns that they just could not cap their prices at 0.7%. So we did see increases where some maintained the 0.7. A lot of suppliers couldn't do that. We saw ranges from 1%, 2%, 3%. And if we look into gloves, that's another 150+%. Going forward, what we're looking to do is work with the suppliers nearer the time that the price reviews come into place, and just to get an understanding of what's happening in the market. If CPI if we can manage the price increases within the CPI band, or if we need to look at what we do going forward in a more holistic approach. Currently, all the ERLA frameworks are focused on CPI, and that's where we want to keep it. But we'll look at if this can or can't be managed, because the key information we need to share with institutions is what is happening going forward. The next item is about using frameworks, further competitions. Now, my position is on the ERLA frameworks, which is what I live and breathe at the moment. Chemicals and consumables have these clauses in them for further competitions. Institutions can run further competitions and you get the greatest level of benefit in doing so. I know a majority of institutions will just go on to Advanced 1 or 1 Advanced or Science Warehouse and just pay the price that's on there. If you've not done a further competition, that is just the framework price. Framework pricing is based on a one-time purchase for one product. If you're buying in bulk, if you've got a pipeline of visibility of spend, I cannot stress enough, a further competition is definitely the best way to go. There's further discounts to be had using the framework terms, but you're getting a greater deal of benefit. That even makes sense. A greater benefit. So I cannot stress it enough. There's several options to doing a further comp. You can look at direct award if that's in your agreement. There is also there's numerous other routes to do it. If you've got any queries, by all means contact either myself or Antonio. We're both fully versed on further comps, and we can definitely help you to get the best value out of your framework agreement. So into the impact of COVID-19. In case you haven't noticed, in the last 12 months or so, we've had a bit of a pandemic going on. The key things that I've been noticing about the impacts on our frameworks. So it's gloves, which I have touched on previously. Again, prices are increasing, availability is improving now, but at the peak it was pretty hard to come by a pair of gloves. We're looking at improvements hopefully towards the start of 2022. But to put this in context, as I've told many people, from working on the NHS project last summer, we noticed that they went from, on an average year, no COVID, just your bog standard illnesses, approximately 1.6 billion gloves per year. At the peak last summer, they were ordering 1.5 billion per week. That's purely just the NHS. If you magnify that 100-fold, you might have an idea of the global draw on this requirement. So as you can understand, prices skyrocket. They pretty much were going to the highest bidder. And we were trying to control that as best we could with the framework suppliers. This is an ongoing piece of work. We're reviewing it almost on a monthly basis with suppliers to understand what's happening and where we're getting closer to framework pricing. Fingers crossed, we're looking towards the start of 2022 where prices look a bit more normal. Fingers crossed. Pipette filter tips is the next one. These are impacted heavily by the COVID testing regimes. Suppliers are now have ramped up working to 24/7 in some instances, and they are predominantly UK based. They have said they just cannot, even at 24/7 working shifts, they cannot meet the demand. So again, filter tips are seeing a bit of a draw. What we have done is we're aware of suppliers that are not on the framework that have them, and if we can't fulfill it through the framework, we are advising alternatives. This isn't the route we'd really like to take, but given the current situation, ultimately getting the filter tips to where they need to go is the priority. Again, if you have issues or concerns, please get in touch with me. I can try and direct you to somewhere that may have them if we really cannot get them through the framework, or we may look at channeling from another party through to a framework supplier. It is a work in progress, but it is getting there. So the next item then is COVID tests. This has been raised as a bit of a concern. They are available on the framework. It's the LUPC Life Science Reagent Framework. They are available through there. If you don't have a contact at North East, by all means, again, give me a shout and we can direct you. But COVID tests are available on the framework. And then we're on to PPE. Now, there are frameworks available. Both the ERLA Chemicals and Consumables framework has a lot for PPE. This is predominantly lab focused, but it does contain gloves, masks, goggles, those kind of things. But we do also have APUC, who have awarded a PPE framework recently, and Crescent Purchasing Consortium, who also have a framework for PPE. Again, as I've stressed throughout this whole thing, if you've got any concerns, by all means, give me a shout and I can point you into the right direction if we can't manage it ourselves. Okay, so moving on.
Thanks. Changes and implications arising from the Green Paper, implications for STEMED. According to the Cabinet Office, Brexit is promising, and I quote, to provide a historic opportunity to overhaul our outdated public procurement regime. Well, I don't know to what extent that will actually happen, but I did sense a tone of optimism in the document. The vast range of our membership means that the regs don't really affect everyone in the same way. Consortia's perception of the paper may differ to our institution's perception, and this may differ between them as well. The Green Paper seems to imply that we will have more flexibility to bend procurement rules to suit our needs, which I'm sure everyone is excited about. So let's see what they come up with. It's difficult to pinpoint specific implications for STEMED, but I was pleased to see that social value figures heavily in the document. All our frameworks already take this into account and will continue to do so. I was also pleased to see that innovation cropped up a fair bit in the document, admitting that, and I quote, science and innovation are important drivers of growth and productivity. Recognizing that some current procurement practices can be seen as barriers to innovation was an interesting point, I thought, especially when thinking of emerging technologies and groundbreaking research equipment. We are hoping that all coming amendments will give more flex to those members who are looking for new, impressive and innovative lab equipment, and to assist these suppliers alike. As for the future of frameworks under the next regime, we found that views were quite mixed. Some consortia colleagues and some suppliers thought that the admin burden of this mooted 8-year open framework model could be just as or more onerous than what we currently do. However, I'm sure that other suppliers and members managing their own internal frameworks might welcome this flexibility. The question of open and closed frameworks is a huge topic, and it's a completely separate issue in itself. Now, in terms of next steps around the Green Paper, well, the consultation closed on the 10th of March, and the Cabinet Office has been analysing all comments received and feeding them into a policy document, which is likely to be presented to Parliament for comment and approval in the autumn. However, no dates have been released yet. We will continue to update members as soon as we have information. So moving on to the next slide. I'm just going to talk a little bit about tenders in progress. So the General Lab Equipment Framework is expiring at the end of this month and is on track to be live on the 31st of May. We've added 5 new lots to this agreement, some of which have been taken from expiring frameworks elsewhere in order to give members more choice and flexibility. We've been told that this approach of consolidating subcategories in frameworks really helps reduce our members' admin efforts because now they would only need to call off under one framework instead of running several call-offs across separate frameworks. So this will save time, effort, and risk. Give me a call if you want to know more about lab equipment, please. Remember, it goes live on the 31st of May. Danny?
Okay, so the next one is the LUPC Lab Gases Framework. This is the new version of the Lab Gases Framework that's been around for quite some time. It's due to go live on the 1st of November 2021. We're currently out for tender as we speak, and submissions are due back at the end of June. The only key changes are that we've added a new lot for tanks, that's including maintenance, and we've got rid of gas detection. That's moved on to the LUPC General Lab Equipment Framework. We thought it was best fit to put it into an equipment framework. The next one is antibodies and sera. We're currently in evaluation, so it's due to go live the 1st of July. Can't really say a great deal more on that one at this time, but it's definitely an exciting situation to be in.
Resources. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about resources available to members. First and foremost, the SUPC and LUPC offer personalized support and advice to assist you with your STEMED frameworks. We also offer market intel through IBIS World Research, which is a resource that you can use at any time. And when we learn, we pass it on through regular training events and webinars. We also run special events that might come out of specific issues, such as a recent session dedicated to Brexit custom delays of STEMED imports. Tender working parties. We try to involve our members in tender working parties that we set up when planning a new tender. Think of it as a tender steering group that agrees the scope and collectively informs the tender process, from designing the lotting strategy all the way to the evaluation of the bids. Tender working parties are also a great opportunity for networking and learning from our peers. Handy for those of us that don't really have time to reinvent the wheel every time. And I have a tender working party request coming up. I'm looking for people out there with an interest in laboratory furniture and museum furniture. This is an area with great potential. So if you're not happy with how your current lab furniture needs are being met, please, please, please do give me a call. Regarding category groups, we also have national and regional category groups made up of consortia category managers like ourselves and members procurement and technical staff too. These meet periodically to discuss the procurement best practice of the day. We discuss supplier performance, we talk about the market, responsible procurement themes as well, and anything else that's topical. For example, we have the electronic components category group. This forum is made up of consortia stakeholders and end users to exchange information about developments and share concerns related to electronic components. High value lab equipment is another category group that we have, which meets periodically to discuss the framework and this type of equipment, which is of strategic importance to many of our members. Danny?
Okay. The next one on the list is the National STEMED Group. This is the group focused on delivering, excuse me, delivering the overarching strategy for STEMED throughout the sector. The group is made up of consortia representatives, as well as procurement, technical and sustainability experts from within the member base. This is across all consortia. We meet up twice a year or more frequently as the need arises, and we discuss key issues that are cropping up, any new initiatives that we think the framework should cover, and generally just chat how frameworks are going and what we want to do going forward. We look at the pipeline of tendering activity for the year ahead and develop working parties as part of that. Then we have the SUPC Lab Group. This is a bit more close to home as such. This is delivered by SUPC for our members directly. We held it twice a year, and we invite any of the lab representatives from within the membership. You're more than welcome to come along. We discuss the frameworks that are in place now, what's happening with them, where we want to go with them, and what new tendering opportunities are on the horizon. We occasionally also have folks joining us to discuss new opportunities, new initiatives. So we've had Green Labs come in and talk about what they do. It's really just to get things talking amongst our members, understanding what the issues are and what we can do to help them. That's the groups we have at the moment. And I think we're wrapping up now. So I'd like to thank you all for watching. Both myself and Antonio will be available for the rest of the afternoon to take any questions. So if you'd like to pop them in the Q&A, we will come back to you as soon as we can. But thanks again for your time today.
Thank you very much, everybody.